In the last week, I've gone all in on street photography. I've been out a lot. Every day I've been out for a couple of hours doing street photography myself, trying to learn as much as possible. I've been studying street photography a lot. And in this video, I'm gonna tell you what I learned in this first week of street photography. The things that I would like to share with anyone who considers trying street photography for themselves. So lesson number 1 is that you really need to give this a chance. And when I say this, I mean that you need to spend some hours outside before you give up on street photography. In the first 3 days when I did this, I spent maybe 7-8 hours outside in total, and I got no photos that I was happy with. It was such a hard few days when I started, and I was very close to giving up. I felt like, yeah, maybe street photography is not for me. I can't get any photos that I like. It feels very hard to take photos of strangers. It feels intimidating. And I wondered if I was ever gonna break through that first barrier, that first threshold. Then on day 4 and day 5, I started getting photos I liked. I started feeling more comfortable taking photos of strangers and walking around with my camera in town. And then I realized that it's important for anyone who decides to try street photography to not give up too early. Give it a chance. Decide to be out at least 15 hours in total with the camera in your hand trying to take photos. I think that is the minimum you need before you decide to give up on this. And actually today when I was out on day 5, it was the first time I really felt comfortable. I felt at home for the first time. Before this I felt like an imposter walking around with a camera trying to take photos. Today I felt comfortable for the first time, and I anticipate that I will feel more and more comfortable every time I go out from now on. Another thing I learned is that you should always go out, no matter if the light looks good or not. In the last week the light wasn't very good most of the time, and sure, it's a lot easier to take nice photos when the light is good, when you're out in the golden hour or if you have some interesting weather conditions. For example, today we had some mist mixed with sunshine, which always creates a very nice mood. But even on the days when the light does not look good, I urge you to go out anyway. Just go out, get the hours in, and very often you will discover as you're out that the light changes and in unexpected ways, and very often it can become very good. For example, on day 4 the light didn't seem that good, but as I was outside, suddenly it shifted and it became kind of interesting, like in this photo. And then it was very nice for an hour before it came back to being boring again. So you can never know beforehand exactly how the light will be or what you will find. I think you should never use the excuse that the light is not good as an excuse not to go out. Go out anyway and you will find something interesting regardless of the light. Another very important lesson is that as soon as you go out, take the camera out of your bag and take a few photos as soon as possible. And the reason for this is that you need to get into the zone. You need to get into photography mode as soon as you can. And the easiest way to get into that mode is to just begin taking photos. Then you shift your mindset and you don't have this barrier between you and actually taking photos. Of course, the first few photos probably won't come out great. That's not the point. The point is to start taking photos so that you get into the photography mode. You activate your photography mind. You start seeing things and you start becoming ready to snap photos. If you, like me, feel a bit intimidated by the thought of photographing strangers out on the street, maybe you're afraid of confrontation, then a good thing when you're starting out is to activate the silent shutter. Most modern mirrorless cameras have a silent shutter, and it works pretty well, and you don't need to be afraid that someone will hear you taking their photo. I've used it a lot in the last few days. Of course, my end goal is to be able to stand up for myself to really own my photos and to use the regular shutter and to not feel intimidated. And I feel like I will get there pretty soon. But as a crutch, when you're starting out, the silent shutter can be a godsend. But you do need to watch out for a few things if you're using the electronic shutter, the silent shutter. For example, if you have a lot of movement side to side, this often can give you the rolling shutter effect, as you see in this photo here. It can warp the image so that it looks very strange. So try not to move the camera side to side, and try not to like have too much sideways movement if you're using electronic shutter. Also, it is not recommended to use it if you have a lot of artificial light in your frame, because that often looks weird if you have an electronic shutter. Then you might need to use the mechanical shutter. Another good tip if you feel intimidated by the thought of photographing strangers out on the street is to just pick a place where there are lots of people passing by, and which has a nice background preferably, and then just stand there and pretend like you're photographing that background. And as people move into your frame, just take photos. Use the silent shutter if you need to. And this can be a great exercise to actually get some nice photos with people in them without it feeling intimidating. Because if you are there first, you are there standing with your camera photographing, then no one would ever be able to become angry at you, because it's not like you're chasing someone with your camera. You're just standing there trying to photograph the scene, and people happen to move into it. So it's not your fault. And actually, this is a great way to get interesting photos, because then you can also pick out a good scene beforehand with good light and with interesting light. So it's a great exercise if you don't have the guts to walk up to someone and photograph them. And then, quite frankly, I don't think you should do that anyway, because I don't know, it kind of feels to me at least like pretty rude behavior. Just pick a scene, stand there, and let people walk into your scene. Another tip is to not let other people define what your style should be. Like, some people will probably comment on some of my photos that this is not street photography, it doesn't have people in it, or like, you don't see the people's faces, then it's not street photography. Like, who cares? Like, if you have a better word for it, be my guest to define it. But if you're out walking on the streets and taking photos of stuff that you find interesting, then to me it's street photography. And don't let anyone else dictate what you should take photos of. I always try to photograph what I am drawn to. And for me, it's not necessarily like people in themselves, it's scenes or subjects that look beautiful, that look aesthetically pleasing to me. And that could be like a window with rain on it, with something behind it, like in the style of Soul Lighter, or it could be a scene with people in it. For me, it's more about an aesthetically pleasing composition than like doing proper street photography according to someone's definition of that. Another tip that I always find to work well is to follow the light. If you see beautiful light somewhere on the horizon or like a block away, go there. Follow wherever you find the light to be beautiful, because to me at least, what makes a beautiful photo is beautiful light. If you have beautiful light, and doesn't matter that much what is in the scene, the photo will look so much better if you have beautiful light on it. So just try to see where the light is beautiful and go there. For example, this morning I found that the light was the most beautiful out at sea. So I hopped on one of the ferries that go out there to get better photos. And it was a good decision. I got many good photos when I was out riding that boat. And finally, try to push yourself to photograph people and photograph scenes with people in them. Because I think that you just need to practice that a bit, and usually it's just a hurdle in the beginning before you notice that no one cares. Like, no one cares if you photograph them, as long as you're not running up to them, photographing right in their face. Like, they will not care. Like, as long as you don't enter their personal space, they will not care if you photograph them. But I think you need to take a few hundred photos with people in them until you actually learn this. Like, people in general don't care if you photograph them. When you have done that, you will become a lot more comfortable photographing scenes with people in them. And then the moment you really find a scene with people in it that you really want to photograph, you will not feel blocked. You will not feel intimidated. You will be able to photograph that scene comfortably because you practiced beforehand photographing scenes with people in them. And that has, for me, made it a lot more fun to go out. And I'm really looking forward to doing more street photography in the upcoming weeks and to get even more comfortable, hopefully, doing that.